everything is caused by them, that the world revolves around them. So it must have been me that did something bad to have mom and dad break up. The goal serves you, not the other way around. So if you set a goal, the primary purpose is to organize your behavior towards something instead of wandering. We don't set a goal. We have lots of different things people pull at our attention. There's all kinds of shiny objects that cause us to kind of wander in circles. And the goal, I think of it as a beacon. Many of the distractions we deal with are engineered purposely. Social engineers and coding engineers who figured out, like, how do you keep somebody on this platform, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, for as long as possible so we can extract maximum ad value. We live in a time where we have more choices than any of our ancestors.
Okay, welcome to another edition of the Living Boldly with Purpose podcast. And I'm just so excited. And you guys know I say it every single time because I am. I love doing these things. I love getting to know people from around the world. Todd, I don't know if you know this, and I guess I don't know if our audience knows this, but when you think of our time zones, we have Eastern, Central, I'm in Mountain, and then we have Pacific. Well, what's unique, and I'm glad you're kind of in this pocket that you're in the central time zone, but 65%, I think we're right around 400 million people in our country now, and 65% of all the residents in the United States live in the Eastern time zone. So most of the time, I end up interacting with, when I do podcasts and people sign up, they're almost all on the East Coast. 7 out of 10 people, all because that's where everybody lives. So it's kind of unique to have somebody from the Central. Only 15% are in Central, 15% are in Pacific, and then my time zone is only 5% of us. But that's because there's like Montana and Wyoming and New Mexico, and nobody lives in those states.
Yeah, there's that band right down that section of the U.S. I saw a documentary about why there's so little population there. Is maybe something for another time.
Yeah, well, that would be cool. I think a lot of it's because there's so much of mountains, and you the mountain range that goes
the mountains and where original cities were and riverways. It's interesting.
Yeah. But you think about like our water, like Colorado water, like supplies part of California, part of Nevada, part of Arizona. So people stealing our water, but I guess they're really not stealing it because they made all these treaties and agreements, and so they track. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but they track the exact amount of water. Like they decided, well, deer are going to drink this much water in the mountains, and so if that much water doesn't end up in Arizona, somebody's stealing it because they're supposed to have it. So it's so funny how this all works. But so excited about talking about what does it mean to live boldly with purpose, and how does purpose work? And for me, one of the things that Todd and I talked about right before the show, I asked him what is he most excited about, and he said a lot of it was just being useful. And that's a word I don't think I've heard too much. The people say I want to be impactful or I want to make a difference, but to be useful. I started thinking about that and I thought, wow, what a great ambition. Is to walk out your door and say, I want to be useful. In the last podcast, somebody had asked me, what does impact mean? I was on like this 15-minute speed. I thought I was talking like this, I was talking to me. He said, what does it mean to be impactful? And I said, impactful meant for me, it meant if I walk out the door and I have a conversation with somebody, that their life is better because I showed up. To me, that's what impact means. Now, that's obviously on a small micro scale. On a macro scale, I have to guess when I go outside, I have to talk to more than just one person. But then when I think of what you said about being useful, oh my gosh, I guess if I found a way to be useful every day, it would impact people. It would impact their lives. And so thank you for sharing that, because it gave me another thought process into what does that mean to live boldly with purpose. And if we're here and to do what God put us on this earth to do, and we're able to find what that is, and we're living in purpose and we're serving others, I think we can have a fulfilled, joyful life. And so, and I can't wait to hear today when we talk to Todd, what is he doing? Mr. Dr. Todd Schneider, what are you doing and what's your life been like, and how you got to where you're at in life. And so thank you again for being on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. And like I said, I can't wait to get going. Can't wait to get started. So the floor is yours, and then we'll chop it up after your story, and we'll have a whole bunch more questions and hopefully really good answers that we can live our lives by, because you've already started out on a win.
Nice. Yeah. So you want me to just kind of share a little bit about my
your story,
personal story, how I came to where I am and what I do, and why I say that being useful is
absolutely
part of my great. Well, let me start my story by mentioning I came back to the U.S., dropped into a small farming community in Illinois right as I was starting high school. I had lived in Rwanda, Africa for good most of the years between age 7 and that point. In a remote part, my father, as a missionary with Christian church, specialized. He has a PhD in aquaculture and was helping the Rwandan men who didn't have enough essentially land available for them to just adopt the subsistence farming of their predecessors, to learn how to farm tilapia in the land that was considered inarable, not farmable land, so we were in this very remote area with no TV. Our electricity was from some solar power, no radio. I mean, except the one Rwandan radio station we could pick up. And so I came from that environment, dropped back into the U.S., and I struggled socially because of having that kind of environment, but also because I just had an innate tendency towards social anxiety that was kind of built into me neurologically and genetically. And I struggled to adapt as I'm trying to figure out my own sort of culture. Some people say you can become a third cultured kid, in the context that you're not fully this culture, you're not fully that culture, you're some blend of them. And in that context, I really struggled. Like I was having trouble talking to people and understanding how to fit in. And I kind of shut down in a way for a while. And then when I was 16, I came across some books, one in my grandmother's cottage up in Michigan. One was The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. Another one was an early book by Tony Robbins, and it had such a big impact on me. It shifted me back to having that internal locus of control, where I realized, you know what, it's really up to me. I can generate the feelings inside of myself by shifting what my goals are and how I approach people. And I stopped being so self-conscious. I learned how to say, other people have all these thoughts, fears, goals, desires. How can I help them achieve those things and connect with them? And it transformed me, I would say, almost overnight. Like, it was such a profound shift in my experience. In the process of going through that, for me, the transformation was so significant that I found myself thinking, like, what was that? Like, that was a big change. I want to learn how to help other people experience those sort of internal changes. And, as I learned more about it, I realized, that's what people call psychology, the study of the mind and shifts in perspectives. And so from there, I thought, I think I want to study psychology. And so that's what I did when I went on to college, and then went on to do a master's degree and then a doctoral degree in clinical psychology at Baylor University's Department of Psychology and Neuroscience, and became a clinical psychologist, and really just kind of went all the way with that, trying to help people with all the full gambit of the things that we struggle with as humans on a mental health level. But there was something in me that kept itching to get back to some of the core things like goal setting and motivation and working at a fast speed that I had always loved. When looking at and learning about things like health psychology and motivation and goal setting and positive psychology. So I started opening up part of my practice to working with people on goals. And one thing led to another. I was on an interview, and then that interview led to contacts with people that started asking me if I could help them with their goals as business owners. And gradually, as I started working with business owners more, I realized these are my people. These are the people I really connect with. So I gradually shifted over and specialized in helping entrepreneurs to achieve goals faster. And so it's partly productivity, it's partly collapsing the time it takes to reach goals through decision strategy. And that's what I get to do now full time. And it's been an exciting journey.
Wow, so cool. So many questions, because when I hear Rwanda, I think of, like you said, kind of in the bush, and like this upheaval of a country that is struggling to find itself, and then being part of that had to be interesting when you think of the identity that you have. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about that. But let's talk about identity. But then to go from, acclimating into a culture that is used to this bombardment of media and everything else, from nothing to all of a sudden, it must have been very loud, is all I can think of what that was like, from the peacefulness of one radio station to the hundreds and thousands of just, inputs that go in. And then you jump into clinical psychology, which is, this steady brain and mind. Then you say Tony Robbins at the same time. I'm like, all right, so how does Tony Robbins and clinical psychology go together?
That's a good intro.
Not
the real deal.
Yeah. So walk me through your identity shifts and how you were able to deal with them, and that social anxiety you have, because that doesn't also go with the Tony Robbins world, the social anxiety, and then the clinical psychology, where you're listening more than you're talking. So I just can't wait to hear all these shifts in identity and how you became who you are.
Yeah. So you're asking, how did the shift in identity happen for me?
Yeah. Like what were you feeling, and how did that, the different identities, and how did you cope with those as you shifted them?
Yeah, well, I mean, to some degree, it's kind of the human condition that we're all, in a way, egocentric when we're born. And, some of the...
Hello, this is Dr. B, and I want to ask you one simple question. What if you died having never become you? Now, I don't mean the version of you that worked the job, raised the kids, or chased security. I mean the person God actually designed you to be, the real you. Because there's a version of your life that's already been written, and it's full of peace, it's full of boldness, it's full of purpose, and of course it's full of power. But most people, many people, they miss it. They live distracted, doubting, disconnected, and deep down they wonder, is this really all there is? But not you, and not today. That's why we created the Becoming the Person universe. It's a living, breathing community of people saying, I want to be who God called me to be. Not someday, but right now. So inside, we'll walk you through 3 levels of transformation. Level 1 is all about identity, where you finally see yourself clearly and know exactly who you are and who you need to become. Level 2 is about mastery, where we develop the disciplines to grow. And then finally, level 3 is legacy, where your life begins to matter beyond you. And hear me. I want you to hear me clear here. This is not a place to passively belong. This is a place to grow, lead, and thrive. We even have ways for you to share in the revenue as we grow, because we believe in building legacy together. And I want you to know, the founders and I are praying for you. We have been praying for you. You have been on our hearts. Yes, you have been on our hearts. You're not watching this by accident. And I want to personally invite you to the next info meeting, where we will go over all this community has to offer. All you have to do is just click the link before, you know what to do. But now it's your turn. I want to ask you to ask yourself, what if this is the moment everything changes? What if this is the reason you've been searching? What if all God has been waiting for is for you to say yes? There's a seat for you here, whether you're rediscovering yourself or finally ready to leave a legacy and are ready to contribute. Either way, this is the Becoming the Person universe. And once you're in, your life will never be the same. So I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to spend time with you. I can't wait to see you on the other side. So let's go live in that purpose, and let's do it together.
Child psychology experts talk about this as a very fundamental aspect of understanding child psychology, that we, for example, a child who is from a family where their parents got divorced, before a certain age, it's almost predictable that the child in some way blames themselves, which you might say, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would they blame themselves? Until you realize how naturally egocentric children are, that they kind of feel like everything is caused by them, that the world revolves around them. So it must have been me that did something bad to have mom and dad break up. So coming from that perspective, it's natural then for me getting thrown in, even though I was older at that point and able to self-reflect, that there's still some aspect of yourself that's too focused on yourself. And when you feel like you're not sure, am I doing the thing that's socially cool or not? And am I fitting in? And how do I fit in? You tend to focus too much on what other people are thinking about you. And when you shift instead to thinking like, well, what do other people need? What are their goals? It changes internally your experience of life. If you think about our minds, we have so many thoughts, memories, ideas in our head that we can't hold it all consciously. As you know, in our conscious thoughts, most of it exists more at the subconscious level until we pay attention to it. And so some people have used this analogy of thinking of our attention as like a flashlight, shining it into a dark closet that represents all the hundreds and thousands of things in our mind. But the beam of that flashlight lights up only certain things in the dark closet at a time. And whatever you focus it on has a profound impact on how you experience what feels like reality to you at that given moment. And so if you shift your attention from yourself and you shine that flashlight on, I wonder what the goals, fears, needs, purposes of the other people are in your life, then it reduces that self-consciousness and it starts to create this positive sort of rolling snowball effect where you become more and more interested in the other person genuinely. It's not an act. It's like starts to gradually become who you are and how you interact with the world in such a way that your self-consciousness goes down and the interest that people experience when you're interacting with them goes up. And so, just thinking from that perspective, I think the identity shift, that was probably a part of that shift towards thinking, I'd rather be useful to others instead of cool and admired by others. So that was a big part of it. And as you can imagine, going through all of the training involved in becoming a licensed psychologist, it's a very rigorous process. And through that, I shifted from being somebody who's trying to understand and learn, like what do people know that I don't understand here, dropped into this different environment, to listening to stories and hearing the inside thoughts of hundreds of people from all different walks of life and with different belief systems and different concepts of what their goals are or should be. And you naturally, as a therapist, you start to empathize with the story and the world that person lives in their own mind as you try to meet them there in that personal reality that they've created. And so that expanded my identity to being one of a person who feels like, I think I understand quite a lot about people in this world. And it shifted my identity towards feeling more like, I think I have some useful answers for people. And that encourages you then, to adopt more of the identity of, well, I'm going to show some people some of the new things that I've discovered that allow me to be useful to them. So that would be, I guess, the answer that comes to my mind.
Oh, that's perfect. One of the things, and I want to jump into goals in a little bit, but you're not going to believe. So this week I've probably done, I don't know, 4 or 5 podcasts, and we've all come down to try to answer this question that you are perfectly and uniquely suited to answer because you're part of both worlds. And the folks that we've gone back and forth. There was a therapist that was on one show, and then there was a coach on another show that we would talk about, and we've been talking about coaching versus therapy and the need for each of them. And I'm a 100% believer where there's times that you need therapy. But the question everybody's been answering, if you have an incredible, great coach, do you actually need a therapist? And I say, well, yeah, because you have to get to maybe this equal level of something so that you can accept what a coach would give you. But we were just kind of talking about the coaches focusing on your future compared to your therapist, focusing on the past and trying to mend and fix and help with the past, and how do those meet? And not that one's better than the other, but that, like, when people are trying to move forward, a coaching seems to be a person that might be able to get you to where you're trying to go. but without the therapist before. So I just want to hear kind of your thought process, because your brain is split in two because you're both.
Yeah.
And so, you're the one with the absolute right answer, because we're just making up because we don't know on the other side of it.
Well, I hope you don't hate my answer, but
Okay.
I would say there is no one size fits all answer.
Okay, of course.
That's my opinion, because it really, you've got to ask, well, who are we talking about? What problems do they have and what goals do they have? And who is the best person that's has the right skills or knowledge or background to help them most with that? And it could be both. It could be, in this case, for this person, for these goals, for this background, that person needs both a therapist and a coach for this specific thing. Or it could be one or the other, or in sequence. But certainly, I would say it's a fairly commonly used concept that, therapy is about the past and coaching is about the future, but that's not really true.
Okay.
If you study clinical psychology, you learn pretty quickly that, there's a great, probably the majority at this point of psychotherapeutic methodologies are about what's happening now and how can we help you build the future you want by, restructuring that internal world. And there's cognitive behavioral therapy and solution-focused therapies and all of these different aspects to that. I think that emerged from a kind of a discomfort people had in the coaching world at first. They're entering in and doing something that felt somewhat like therapy, but not being licensed to do it. And so they wanted to come up with a distinction. I would think that's not the best distinction between coaching the past versus present. Of course, psychodynamic psychotherapy, which is what most people who don't study clinical psychology think of, is like that kind of in our collective consciousness is the person on the couch talking about almost free association about their childhood. That's a very uncommon form of psychotherapy at this point. There are still therapists that focus on that, but it's the vast minority of people that are using that method, partly because it's just been less empirically validated by research studies compared to things like cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, there would be people that would disagree with that and say, well, there's all this evidence of how it helps. And I would say, oh, yeah, you're right. It's just that it's harder to study. The nature of it is that it changes every time you do it. So how do you systematize it enough to be able to be consistent and use it in research? But there's one thing I would say that is the core difference. It is that you're typically looking at, and even this isn't 100% true, but generally therapists are focused on ameliorating some sort of pain or difficulty that is pulling you below the average functioning on some level, whether it's a relationship issue or if it's how you cope with anxiety-provoking triggers or depression. Versus coaching is about, regardless of where you are, we're going to go up from here, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that you're kind of functioning below the average level. You could be, one of the best people in the world at what you do, but you want to get even better. And people often hire a coach for that reason. And another distinction I think is worth pointing out is just that, even coaching isn't just one thing.
Of course.
There's executive coaching that is more, or life coaching that is more focused on the person showing up, being fully present with people and asking the right kinds of questions just to elicit the knowledge and insight of the person that they're working with. And in that case, what you're really doing is you're creating the scaffolding that makes it easier for a person to reveal the insights they already had bubbling up, but they just needed someone to kind of pull it out of them and structure it a little bit compared to what they could do on their own, just thinking while taking a walk or something. And then there's another kind of coaching that some people might call it consulting type coaching, where you are the expert in something. So if you are an expert gold medalist swimmer or bicycle racer or something, then you have very specific knowledge and you're actually imparting that to the person. And so in that case, you're less passive, like an executive coach or a life coach who may have experience, from lots of conversations with other executives or other people going through life. But they're not saying I'm the expert on life or I'm the expert on your business. They're saying I'm going to help you discover what's there, versus someone who says, actually, I'm the expert on how you do phone sales for this particular type of business that you're in, and let me teach you what I know. So there's so much within coaching itself that even that is not just a one-size-fits-all sort of entity.
Oh yeah, so right, because I've been coaching now track for 38 years. I've coached from the Olympic level to junior high level to high school champions, and one of the things that I can absolutely say is I can teach technique, that down pat. But the hard part is what goes on between the two ears of the folks that you're sitting down with, and sometimes I probably feel like, man, I'm not equipped to have some of these conversations, especially when you start thinking of, some of the high school kids that don't have really good home lives and the things that they're doing. And you're just trying to get through, this is how they feel today when they got up, and the emotions of a adolescent anyways are just all over the place, and then getting in between, but I can even say some of my Olympic athletes, the same thing. I mean, we spend more, 85% is what are we thinking about today, and how are we going to move through that than it is, the actual how to go over a hurdle or how to jump over a bar, which is so cool to me to think through what you're saying, because I absolutely get it, because there is not one, and to even think that there would be one size that fits all is just, somebody would just have to be like, I shouldn't be in this space if that's what I believe, that everybody's the same. But I guess, and I don't know how, like you said, how therapy got its name, because when I think of a therapist, I think of, somebody who has an issue that they're trying to resolve, that is stopping them from achieving whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And I think that's when, and that totally could be, off on, what is actually happening in, helping somebody move forward. So thank you for sharing that. I do want to jump into, when you were talking about your story and the goals and the things that you talk about, one of my thought processes on goals is that, and I would love to hear how you tackled this, is I've kind of almost come full circle with, the SMART goals, or the goals that have to have a date, and then you win the date, because with my faith in the things that I believe, I don't know if I can control a date. I can control the activity, and I think it's important to have activities and things you do. But as soon as I put a date with that, I almost kind of start thinking, well, all right, God, you this is what I want, and I want it to happen on this day. Make it happen on that day for me, because I can't control that, but I can control the activity. And so I try to make my goals. There's things that I believe I want to have that are within that His will or the purpose, but at the same time, I go, if I put a date on it, maybe help me through your goal setting practices.
I love that question. Yeah, that's something I think a lot of people wrestle with, and including myself. I've wrestled with that question a lot for myself and with my clients, and I've even had clients say, in response to my prompts to, hey, let's set some goals for this year, this quarter, or something, like, I don't really like setting goals because sometimes it makes me feel bad if I don't achieve them. And so we start by remembering, like, the goal serves you, not the other way around. So if you set a goal, it's really the primary purpose is to organize your behavior towards something instead of wandering. Okay. So if we don't set a goal, we have lots of different things people pull at our attention. There's all kinds of shiny objects that cause us to kind of wander in circles. And the goal, I think of it as a beacon. It's like a lighthouse showing you, like, where am I trying to get again? And so if you adopt that perspective, then it doesn't really matter if you set what I call a lag indicator, a lagging indicator of whether you're achieving what you need to achieve. So if I said, my goal is to run a mile in 4 minutes, or to earn $100,000 in the business this month, then that's just a beacon, and that we work backwards from there to set the leading indicators of, okay, well, what are the things we actually have control over that will lead to that outcome? And that's where we really focus our attention on a day-to-day basis. We want both. We want a combination of lagging indicators, the things that we actually care about that we can't control directly, and then the leading indicators that we can check off, did I do those things or not? And that helps us to essentially have a feedback loop that shows us, am I wandering off course, or am I doing the things that I need to? And then if you release that need for, somehow if you didn't achieve the goal that you've failed, then it's a very useful thing. And, there's plenty of research that shows that if we set goals, that we're going to make more progress than if we don't. And even Google, they use, an OKR framework, where they'll say, 1.0 represents, like perfect achievement of the goals that we set for this quarter or this month. And what they do is if anything a 0.7 or above, which means 70% of the leading indicators or lagging indicator goal, if that's achieved, they celebrate that like it's 100% win, because they set high hard goals, knowing that that some of the research shows that high hard goals cause us to get more out of ourselves than if we just say, I could probably do this. That's what I usually do, and we just go for that same easy level of goal. So it's good to set high hard goals and then think, okay, thinking backwards from there, what would I have to do to achieve it? As long as you just don't start tying up your identity with it, or think that somehow you yourself or God has failed you in some way if you don't achieve a goal. It was just a tool, and it helped to keep you organized and focused. And that's how I like to think of it.
No, I love that because that puts a perspective on, yes, this is my beacon. This is what I like to hit. But here are all the things, like you said, reverse engineering it back to, okay, in order to hit that 100,000 or that $1 million in a year, this is the activities that I must do. Now let's focus on those activities. And by focusing on those activities, our probability of hitting that goal actually move up.
Right.
So, but what then happens is there's these things that are called distractions, or things that jump in our way of it. So I would love to kind of hear your thoughts, because we live in this world now where there's a dangling carrot every few seconds in our lives, just because we're so bombarded with not only information, but entertainment and, all these things. How do we, or are you helping people, I guess, take away some of those distractions that would stop them from achieving?
Yeah, I like to start with a concept that I learned from Dan Nicholson, a top 50 CPA company owner. He calls it the solvable problem. And you want to start with having a solvable problem, which is just a way of saying, like, what actually matters to you personally? What is your definition of success, which, is going to change based on whatever time frame we're talking about. So if you start there, it's so much easier to solve an equation where there's something specific on the other side of the equal sign, compared to if it's just variables on the left and variables on the right, and you're not quite sure what are we actually trying to solve for. It's much, much easier to solve for something once you define what it is. And that helps to reduce distractions. There's also just the frequent feedback cycle of, which you have a vision and you set a goal for how you're going to achieve that. And then you work backwards, like you said, the reverse engineering process that should have a frequent enough check-in that it works for you personally. And for some of my clients, that means it needs to be throughout the day, because they know that, for example, some of the guys I work with, even though they're very successful in business, have ADHD, neurological tendencies that cause them to be more vulnerable to going off track, even just within the day. Like, they might have reviewed their goals in the morning and what the leading indicators they should be working on today are, but 2 hours later, because of an email that came in, they're like researching some other business model or something they know they shouldn't be doing if they want to make any meaningful progress.
Hey, it's Dr. B, and let me ask you something just here real quick. Are you tired of doing the same thing over and over and not getting the results you want? Are you serious about making some changes this year that will impact you in a huge way? Maybe you're putting out content right now and it's not turning into customers, or maybe you're uploading videos, but you're not sure why or how it's even going to help. I've seen a lot of people that are making a whole bunch of cold calls to the wrong people, and no one's answering. No one wants to talk to you. It might just be that you're just doing what you've been doing and crossing your fingers, hoping it finally works this year. But let me tell you what, that is not a strategy, and it will continue not to work. That's why I created the Podcasting Challenge, and it's coming up fast. In just a few days, I'm going to walk you through the mindset, the tool set, and the skill set you need to create a powerful podcast. That's right, a podcast. You won't believe what a podcast can do. One that builds real value and creates new clients. And if you grab a VIP ticket, you'll get to join me for a daily Zoom Q&A sessions where I'll personally answer your questions and help you tailor everything to your goals. This is your moment. This is your year. Go to thepodcastingchallenge.com right now and save your seat. The link is in the show notes and the description. Thank you for watching these podcasts. Now let's get back to the conversation.
Towards accomplishing something real. And so some people need to actually work all day from a written list. And that's one thing that I commonly say is, like, let's start by removing overwhelm, and then let's make sure that you have no internal civil war about what you're actually going for. So decide what you want. Then let's put some sort of plan in place that has milestones, some to break it down to more meaningful chunks that release the dopamine to go after it, because, the closer it is in time, the more we start to feel motivated to go after it, versus if it's distant in the future, we do that temporal discounting where our brain just says, oh, that reward, it's so far away, it doesn't matter. That's why it's hard to say no to the chocolate cake right there in front of you that you can picture putting in your mouth. And it's like you can mentally simulate that moist chocolate cake. And it's like, now that reward has a disproportionately large impact on our actions compared to 6 months from now, I would probably be 10 pounds lighter and hit the goal that I care about way more than chocolate cake. But it's so distant and it's like discounted by our brain. And it works the other way too, interestingly enough. If you tell somebody, hey, who's afraid of the dentist, like, we have an appointment available for you later this afternoon at 2 p.m. Can you make it? People are far more likely to say no in some of the research on this topic, versus if you say, there's one next month on a Tuesday at 2 p.m., people will say yes more often, because the consequence that we're afraid of is further into the future, so it doesn't seem as scary. So anyway, we're coming back to your question. The distraction that we deal with so often in this world, that just seems to, I'm sure you and your listeners all know that many of the distractions we deal with are engineered purposely by, the social engineers and coding engineers who figured out, like, how do you keep somebody on this platform of, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, for as long as possible, so we can extract maximum ad value from these users. And so we're bombarded with that. And we live in a time where we have more choices than any of our ancestors have had. It used to be that if you grew up in a carpenter family or a blacksmith family, that there was kind of only very few options. You just do what you were, this is the one option is my dad can teach me how to do blacksmithing, so that's what I'm going to do. We live in this environment now where we can go online and learn about businesses that we'd never heard of last week, and we can be pursuing them by this afternoon. And so we do need more of those guardrails to channel us towards, that solvable problem, that thing that you've decided, like, this is what I want. So that's why I say, start with getting clear about what you want, separate it from what society is telling you that you should want, because we don't all want the same thing. And sometimes we, accidentally absorb the idea that we want something other people want and need to escape from things other people are trying to escape from. Mimetic desire is the term that some people use to study that weird phenomenon by which we start wanting things just because we see that other people want them. And it happens, at the subconscious level. We're not consciously aware that we're doing it, but we just start to gravitate over towards, I need the fancy car too, because my other friends are all saying that that's what they're saving for. When maybe for you, the reality is it doesn't boost your well-being at all. You could care less whether you have a fancy car or the fancy watch, but what you really want is more time with your kids. So when we have defined that, then when a question comes up of like, hey, should I take on this extra, gig with this company that wants to hire me to do these things? It's going to be like an extra 2 to 3 hours a week, and they're going to pay me well. Should I do it? That kind of question is so much easier to answer when we can look at what's on the other side of your equal sign, more time with your kids. Well, then no, you shouldn't do it. It doesn't matter if that means more money, right? It's like, but the truth is, for most of us, the things we want, it's more of a ratio than it is one thing. It's like, I want $1 million a year without having to give up my friends and some time to watch TV with my wife in the evening. Or, I want to launch multiple businesses, but without having to risk everything I've saved up so far. It's for most of us, it's a ratio. Yeah. And so we have to take that into consideration as well.
Wow. Oh, man, there's so much to unpack in there. So I hope that you guys that are watching this right now, and you guys that's recording, hit pause and go back and listen to that one more time before we go in, because it's so important what he just said. But, I would like to say, but Todd, I have a wife, I have kids, I have relationships, I have my friends. I want to please everybody. And then I also want to make $1 million, or I also want to do this. And so I got to go to the game, right? My wife wants me to go to this dinner. My kids want me to go to their outings. And I've decided my relationships, I say, are the number one thing in my life. But yet they keep telling me that the actions that I'm taking aren't showing that they're the number one priority in real life. How do we balance that? How do we, look at that? Because if they are, and I think relationships should be one of the most important things in our life, because that's what brings us joy. There's not too many people saying, I wish I would have worked 100 more hours that week when I'm on my deathbed. But how do we balance that when we have these goals and these things that we want to achieve as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me, I think it was Brian Tracy. I was listening to one of his CDs, and he was quoting Jim Rohn, someone he listened to, was saying, I think fully 85% of all the success we achieve in life comes down to the relationships we have. And I thought about that. I was like, what, really? Oh, yeah, I guess there's not much point in success if you get to the end, you're the billionaire who has no friends to celebrate it with. It's a pretty lonely and empty feeling. But as I've thought about it more, I realized that might have actually been an underestimation of the truth. So much of our sense of well-being and success comes from, have we interacted with our family and friends in a way that creates the richness of life and those shared stories that we build together. So, but it's interesting. I think you were touching on something that many people in the productivity world talk about a lot, which is your calendar. Does it actually reflect what you say you value? So if you say you value time with your kids, show me on your calendar where have you time boxed some space for that? If you value fitness, like, is that, why are you working till 8 p.m. and then hopefully trying to find a time to work out once a week? Like and so of course there's some productivity systems that actually take that. There's some software systems that have specifically been designed, like Aki Flow or Sunsama, are two examples where you dump your tasks over in the left column, and then you drag them onto a calendar that's synced with your Gmail on the right, and you estimate the time of each task, whether it's a 20-minute recurring admin task you have to do every week or every day at 7 a.m. on Tuesdays, or if it's a one-off task that's, a progress task towards a needle-moving future objective. So you're dragging those over to your calendar, and then what people's experience is oops, it doesn't all fit. And that's where the value comes in. At first, people will say, like, this system doesn't work. This is frustrating. I can't fit it all in. Until they realize, wait, that was the point, is that you see that it's not going to all fit. And so that forces you then to prioritize. And so then you have to ask yourself, well, what do I actually care about most? So then as a result, you schedule the things on your calendar. You end up doing more of the things. A higher percentage of your time is spent on the things that you actually meant to do, instead of the nonsense things that you probably could have skipped and gotten away with not doing. And that's yet again another specific solution to the distraction problem that we all face.
Wow. So you're using names like Brian Tracy and Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and all these folks that highlight personal development and working on ourselves. One of the things that I try to do is help people become the person that God put them on this earth to do, so they can go out and do why they're here. But that takes working on ourselves. It takes, the time in your mind or in your research and things you've done, and probably even with your coaching with goals, how much of a person's time, and I know one size doesn't fit all, but, like a general, we got to spend some amount of time on working on us so we can become better. What does that look like for a person who's achieving some of the successes that they desire?
So you're saying, where does personal development fit into
and how
much
needs to be there?
Yeah. And you're right. Like, as soon as I start trying to think of what would be my answer to that question, I start thinking, okay, for this person, it's this, for this person, it's something else. One of my goals for the entrepreneurs I work with is, if you haven't achieved this, to first create your forever runway is the phrase I've given for that, which just means you've saved up enough into passive income sources that are not correlated with your own business that you're operating, such that you have a infinite runway of, exploring new business models, trying to build something from scratch that brings value and benefit to the world profitably. And that way you have time on your side, right? Because then it's not, well, this business model better work within 2 months or else we're out of cash and we have to stop because I need something to pay me for the grocery bill. So if that person, that's kind of a starting point, but eventually I've tried to get guys to the point where their business is operating without them putting out the fires and being even anywhere necessary within the org chart for the primary revenue generating activities of the business. And if you can achieve that, Well, that means you can spend a lot of your time on personal development, and that ends up, you start to see that sort of that phenomena where, whoever has much ends up being able to double down and build even more. And the people that have less, it's like they have less available time to invest in those personal development. It seems a little unfair, but it is nonetheless a pattern that seems to show up in our world over and over. And so, then there's that question of, well, what's the 80-20 for you personally? For me in high school, as my story revealed, like it was overcoming the reticence to engage socially and learning those social skills. For me, that kind of personal development was a transformative thing versus for some extroverted, charismatic person who'd grown up, with in the same group of friends in a certain community. Like, they don't need that. They might need a completely different form of personal development. And as you know, as a coach, some forms of personal development take more time than others. So I'm sure that many different levels of coaching that you've done with different sports and people, that you've seen this where, for one thing, it's just about refining your ability to, to shoot the basketball from a certain, like the 3-point line or the free throw line. And one of those might be easier than learning how to pass without looking, where that skill takes way longer to develop. And I think in personal development, the same is true. Like, there's some things where once you've identified what's the 80-20 for me, then it's easier to say, okay, here's how much it's going to cost me to develop that. And I heard a coach say early on, as I was shifting more of my focus into coaching from clinical work, I heard somebody say, it's the people who get what they want. One of the core distinctions is it's that they determine in advance the price that they're going to have to pay to get what they want, and they decide that they are willing to pay that price. And what that does, it just psychologically, it shifts something in us where now, instead of approaching the hard workout or the 2 hours, learning from Dr. Brian on his podcast or whatever it is that avenue for personal development you've chosen, it stops it from being like, oh, I have to fit that in, I have to do it, to, oh, I want to do that. I'm ready and willing to pay that price because the thing that I want on the other side of that personal development is so worth it to me.
Okay. So, and I love the answer, because it is so true, and it's a work. But where I guess I come to the rub of or what makes it all more difficult, because it seems like when you at the beginning, when you need the most personal development to even get to that point where you can save up or have the money to be able to take away, is when you need that time to be able to do it, but you don't have the time or the resources to do it. And then once you have the resources to do it, now you can definitely 10x your business or move it up to that extra level. But it's because you've already paid the price on the stuff that was super hard, because that's at the beginning is when, oh man, I don't know what I don't know. And I can't move forward without knowing it. And I got to spend time on doing this. I just don't have the time because I'm teetering on my business going out of business. But if I haven't become that person who can make this happen, then I spend all my time on that when I should be time in, if I could figure out how to do it, spend the time on working on me, because then those problems that I'm solving, or those things that I'm solving all the time, would go away if I could just eke out that time to be able to do it. But then now later on, okay, I'm set. I'm okay. I'm at this baseline. Well, now I got a lot of time because we've worked all this other stuff. Now, boom, all of a sudden you go from, I make $100 million a year to $1 billion because you have all this time to work on you. How do we help the person who's just freaking out?
Yeah, that person whose kids need them and they have to put in extra work hours just to meet the basic needs. Like, that's the person that I think you have a heart for reaching out and helping those people get that first advantage from the personal development. And you're right, it's the time where instead of being in the position where you can use your work hours to do that because you've achieved that high level that I was talking about earlier, you're the person who has to say, I'm going to give up some of the entertainment time that other people use to pursue personal development, or I'm going to build the systems to where I have this automatic exposure. I remember when I had very little time, I was trying to start my psychotherapy private practice. And, if I wasn't doing paperwork or arguing with insurance companies on the phone, I was in a patient call and I had kids at home. If I wasn't working one-on-one with someone, I'd be wondering like, oh, what can I do to get home earlier, to spend some time with them? And your time is so valuable. And so I learned to do some simple things like, back when cars all had CD players, I had a CD that would start playing some sort of, continuing education research thing for psychology, or, the Jim Rohn or, Tony Robbins type stuff. Make sure that as soon as I start my car, it's playing. And so I'm doubling up, right? I'm not wasting the driving hours. I'm learning, and it's not as good as if my attention was fully on that and I was taking notes in a quiet office compared to driving. But you've got to start somewhere. So that's one thing, is to find, we know that multitasking doesn't work, but that's when we're talking about cognitive multitasking. But there are a few exceptions to that. Like, you can run on a treadmill, be multitasking in the sense that you're getting your fitness in and listening to a podcast from Dr. Brian at the same time, right? So there are a few exceptions of that sort where they're not both using your brain. It's like your body is doing the dishes while your head is listening to the personal development content. So investing a little bit of time up front, if I was going to tell someone, like, where do you start? I'd say slow down and think instead of using brute force effort. Like, think, how could I engineer a system that makes it almost automatic that I start absorbing a little bit more personal development each week, and it starts having this compounding effect. And so that's where, you need to look at your life and evaluate where can I invest some time and money in a way that costs the least but has the most benefit, and make it to where it's almost systematic and automatic, to where I don't have to remember to decide to invest in that personal development over and over again. It's just kind of built into your environment, so that your environment triggers you to do the right things at the right times.
And that's so good. And when I think there's so many, when you just kind of do a time analysis of where you're spending your time, I think we can all find time that, is being, I don't want to say wasted, because some of us need some of that downtime to be able to do stuff. But then, like what you were saying on the, what price am I willing to pay? And the price might be a good price. I mean, it might be, well, my friends want me to go watch this basketball game, with them. And you're saying, well, I want to spend the time with my kids. Well, the price is, a price list to spend the time with your kids. And if your friends don't want you to be around them anymore because you didn't go to the basketball game with them, and they don't understand that you got to spend your time with the kids, maybe they're not your true friends anyways. Maybe they were your hanging buddies in college, but we're not in college anymore, right? We're in a life situation, and there's so many people because they want you to be there in their community, but at the same time, we're watching a whole bunch of millionaires bounce a basketball up and down a court, living out their dreams, while we're like struggling at the same time. Right. You go, wait a minute, what's the price I'm paying? I'm paying a price to go watch. And I love sports. I'm a coach, right? And I love entertainment, and I go to concerts and that kind of stuff, but at what price? And so I love what you said right there about, what is that price you're willing to pay in order to get? Yeah, man, this has gone fast. This is so good, but I know we got to kind of wind it down. But I want to know what didn't we talk about? Because I was super selfish. I'm sorry, because I wanted to know all these things because I wanted to jump into a brand new
I find it a fascinating conversation. You know how it is, but a gifted coach like you talks to another coach like me. You pull out stuff that I forgot I even knew, and it's always interesting.
Oh, so that's cool. But what did we talk about that you wanted to make sure we touch on today?
Oh, well, one of the kind of foundational elements of what I do is decision coaching. And people think like, what? I thought you said you were a productivity coach for entrepreneurs. Yes. How do you think we achieve productivity? It's through decisions. We're always making bets. We're always placing a bet on how to invest our time, energy, resources, our team's energy, our financial resources. And, it's like some people say, if you're saying yes to this, it means you're saying no to something else. So we want to make those strategic bets, and we want to make sure that we're stacking the odds in your favor so that you can actually achieve the things that matter to you most. And so when we try to stack the odds in your favor, one of the things that we want to do is ensure that we are doing really good mental simulations of the future. This is our core superpower as humans. This is what separates us from the animal kingdom. People talk, well, it's language, or we have thumbs, or we use tools, but really I would argue it's more our capacity to simulate a future that hasn't happened yet even distant in the future. That's also why we get ulcers. Like somebody wrote a book, why zebras don't get ulcers. And it's like they run from the lion, and then they, 3 minutes after the dangerous pass, they're back to just grazing, and their heart rate goes back down. Versus us humans, we spend the next 3 months worrying about when is the lion going to come back. It can be a curse, but it is also our superpower that we're able to look into the future. And so as I encourage people to think about decisions, we try to enrich their mental map of the future. That is the essence of what it means to boost your intelligence. Whatever level of neurological underlying intelligence God gifted you with, you can boost that by increasing and practicing the art of mentally simulating with more detail than we typically do when we're just kind of thinking while we take a walk and chatting with friends. We can boost that with certain prompts. And that's what I like to help people to do. It's not rocket science, but with some scaffolding, you can do better than without. So if you're at home and you don't have the resources for a coach, I would say start by thinking on paper. Look at 3 years from now, 3 months from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 days from now, and then do a time box for each of those and say, if I was really serious about going for some goals or achieving something in my life or being useful to people in a certain way by 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks from now, what would my schedule need to look like? You start to fill that in, and it prevents your mind from wandering because you're thinking on paper. Like, okay, on Tuesdays, I'd be doing this. And on Thursday evenings, I'd be investing in this. And it helps us to generate a map for ourselves that leads us more in the right paths and less along the wandering paths.
Wow. Well, this is so cool. What's your website so people, or how do they get a hold of you to help them with decision making, that kind of stuff? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. If you guys want to see some of the things that I talk about and think about, you can find me at toddschneidercoaching.com. It's spelled SNY. And I have a YouTube channel. I occasionally put things out on the Far-Sighted Entrepreneur, but you can find links to that from my website. And I'm not a person who spends much of my time generating content for social media, and I'm not on social media much. But if you wanted to connect with me, that's where you can find me.
All right. Well, thank you, man. I'm going to ask you. So I think I talked at the beginning of the show. I'm launching a community on July 4th, which is called Becoming the Person Universe. And so I would love to have you as a guest in that community and be able to talk with people. We'll figure out how to make that all work. But this has been phenomenally fantastic. And I thank you for being on there. I've learned so much. I literally have 4 pages of notes of all the different things you're saying. I can't wait to go back and watch it again. If this is your first time on this show, we have many more shows like that. Hit notifications and buttons to subscribe and all that kind of stuff, because you don't want to miss it. You're going to want to get into the community at some point, because we're going to have people just like Dr. Schneider on there that are talking about how to move your life in the way that you want to. You have this ability. I believe you're God's greatest gift. You can do this. You can make this happen. One last word, Dr. Schneider.
One last word. Is that an actual last word?
Yeah, well, you get 10, I guess.
All right. Okay. So leverage that excess capacity you have for mentally simulating your future so that you really go for what you want.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on. This has been a pleasure. I can't wait to see you guys on the next one. Have an amazing, awesome, just awestruck day today. See you soon.